New Delhi. I am Dr. Sanjeev Sharma, Assistant Director, HRDC JNU. On behalf of the HRDC JNU, it's my privilege to host the combined inaugural session for 2 short-term courses on gender sensitization and social justice and in cyber security. विद्या की देवी मां शारदा को सजदा एवं नमन करते हुए I would be happy to commence the inaugural session, and it gives me an immense pleasure and indeed a great honor and deep sense of gratitude to welcome our esteemed guest, coordinator of the program and valuable participant connecting virtually from different parts of India. Formal welcome speech will be delivered by our director HRDC JNU later, but I would just reiterate here that, sir, this is our 5th and 6th short-term program. We have already completed 2 short-term program and 2 refresher course. So the coronavirus pandemic has entirely changed the education environment around the globe. The situation is no different in India, and now many education institutions are opting to continue their normal classes on online platform and conducting online conferences, seminar and training program. This includes the use of online tool that allow teacher and student to meet virtually. Online has become the important mode of education during the long lockdown period and after in the wake of COVID-19. And new solutions for education could bring such indeed innovations. It would be highly relevant for thinkers, academicians, and students to reflect on the profound implication of this crisis. And therefore, the Human Resource Development Center, JNU, under your guidance, sir, and support, as per the direction of the UGC, we have decided to conduct all HRDC UG program through online. In addition to refresher course, sir, faculty induction program, and multidisciplinary courses, we are also conducting continually webinar series, sir. So today we have eminent speakers and guests with us, and I am profusely elated to take an opportunity to introduce our esteemed guest. Although they need not require an introduction, but maybe many of the participants are joining with us first time. So it is my responsibility and honor to introduce our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor M. Jagdish Kumar, a great academician, administrator, and man of distinct visions, and fountainhead of illuminating ideas, and idol of knowledge and source of inspiration to all of us. Professor Kumar is our Vice Chancellor and Professor in the Department of Electrical Engineering, IIT Delhi. And sir is continuously teaching there. Welcome, sir. Thank you very much for sparing your valuable time. Sir, your vision and leadership is reflecting in the all-round development of our university. And we proudly say that under your leadership, we are the topmost university in our country. Thank you very much, sir. We are more than happy by the presence of Professor P.V. Sharma, Honorable Vice Chancellor of MIT University, Gurgaon. Thank you very much, sir, sparing your valuable time and accepting our invitations. Professor P.V. Sharma is the Vice Chancellor at MIT University, Gurgaon. Before that, Professor Sharma was Founder Vice Chancellor of Delhi Technological University, Delhi, and Rajiv Gandhi Technical University, Bhopal. He was also principal for Delhi School of Technical College, and he was professor for more than 10 years in IIT Delhi. Thank you very much, sir. And sir, I believe your presence will make a difference to all our participants connecting virtually in these inaugural sessions. Now, I would like to introduce and welcome Sri Neeraj Arora ji. Neeraj Arora ji is a keynote speaker for today's inaugural session, and he is advocate on record in Supreme Court of India and a computer forensic expert. He is also special public prosecutor with the National Investigation Agency and also on the panel of Controller of Certified Authority, Ministry of Information Technology, Government of India. Welcome, sir, and thank you very much for accepting our invitation and joining us. We have today with us our coordinator, Dr. Bhaspati Das, my colleague in the Center for Study of Regional Development and School of Social Sciences. Welcome, ma'am. We have Dr. Jahid Raja, from School of Computer and System Sciences, coordinator for the Cyber Security Short-Term Program. We have with us the Dean of School of Computer Sciences, Professor Vijay. Welcome, sir. And I also welcome our director, Professor Brajesh Kumar Pandey ji. Professor Brajesh Kumar Pandey ji is professor in School of Sanskrit and Indic Study. And before joining JNU, he was professor in the University of Kumaon at Nainital. Sir, मैं आपसे विनम्र निवेदन करता हूं कि आप आगे की कार्रवाई और आप कीजिए. Over to you, Professor Brajesh Kumar Pandey, sir.
धन्यवाद डॉक्टर संजीव. सबका अभिनंदन एवं सबको प्रणाम. HRDC JNU आज से 2 अल्पकालिक पाठ्यक्रम प्रारंभ करने जा रहा है. इस उद्घाटन सत्र में ऑनलाइन रूप से वर्चुअल प्लेटफॉर्म पे मैं आप सबका अभिवादन एवं स्वागत करता हूं. साइबर जेंडर सेंसिटाइजेशन एंड सोशल जस्टिस, साइबर सुरक्षा और लैंगिक संवेदनशीलता एवं सामाजिक न्याय, इस विषय पे ये हमारे 2 पाठ्यक्रम प्रारंभ होने वाले हैं और उनका ये संयुक्त उद्घाटन सत्र है. इनमें इन दोनों विषयों के प्रतिभागी उपस्थित हैं. मैं सर्वप्रथम औपचारिक स्वागत एवं अभिनंदन करता हूं अपने कुलपति प्रोफेसर एम जगदीश कुमार जी का. हमारी समस्त गतिविधियों के वे प्रेरक तत्व हैं. तकनीक एवं मानवीय संवेदनाओं के मध्य जो पारस्परिक अंतर संबंध होना चाहिए, इसके प्रति उनकी निरंतर सजग दृष्टि है और हमें यह दृष्टि कुछ नवीन कार्य करने की ओर निरंतर प्रेरित करती है. उनका नेतृत्व JNU के विराट फलक को निरंतर विस्तार दे रहा है, उसे एक नई ऊर्जा, गति और भंगिमा प्रदान कर रहा है. स्वागत है सर. मैं अभिनंदन एवं स्वागत करता हूं MIT विश्वविद्यालय गुरुग्राम के माननीय कुलपति तथा दिल्ली टेक्नोलॉजिकल यूनिवर्सिटी के पूर्व कुलपति प्रोफेसर PV शर्मा जी का. आप प्रख्यात चिंतक, विचारक एवं शिक्षाविद हैं. मैकेनिकल इंजीनियरिंग के विशेषज्ञ हैं, किंतु ज्ञान का क्षेत्र इतना विस्तृत है कि आश्चर्य होता है. भारत की ज्ञान परंपरा, ऐतिह्य, लोक एवं शास्त्र का आपका पांडित्य सहज ही मुग्ध करता है. हम आभारी हैं कि आपने हमें आज समय दिया है. स्वागत है सर. आज के हमारे विशिष्ट वक्ता कीनोट स्पीकर के रूप में जो हमारे बीच में उपस्थित हैं, श्री नीरज अरोरा जी, वो अपने क्षेत्र के विशिष्ट व्यक्तित्व हैं. विधि के, लॉ के विविध विषयों का आपका ज्ञान देश के विधिक ज्ञान के क्षेत्र को समृद्ध, परिष्कृत एवं सुदृढ़ करने वाला है. आज से शुरू होने वाला ये पाठ्यक्रम आपके वक्तव्य का निश्चित रूप से आश्रय लेगा. आपका स्वागत एवं अभिनंदन करते हुए हमें हार्दिक प्रसन्नता है. मैं HRDC परिवार की ओर से पाठ्यक्रमों के दोनों समन्वयक डॉक्टर भास्वती दास एवं डॉक्टर जाहिद रजा का हार्दिक अभिनंदन करता हूं. डॉक्टर भास्वती दास सामाजिक विषयों एवं लैंगिक समस्याओं के प्रति पैनी दृष्टि रखने वाली सक्षम प्राध्यापिका हैं. उन्होंने बहुत ही मनोयोग से विशेषज्ञों के पैनल का चयन किया है. डॉक्टर जाहिद रजा तथा पर्दे के पीछे से कंप्यूटर साइंस के विभाग के जो डीन हैं प्रोफेसर TV विजय कुमार, इन दोनों ने मिलकर साइबर सुरक्षा के विषय को सुनियोजित एवं क्रमबद्ध ढंग से प्रस्तुत करने की योजना बनाई है. इसलिए दोनों का मैं अभिनंदन करता हूं. मैं अपने ऊर्जावान एवं परिश्रमी सहायक निदेशक डॉक्टर संजीव शर्मा तथा HRDC के समस्त स्टाफ का भी स्वागत करना चाहता हूं, जिनके बिना ये ऑनलाइन मोड में संचालित होने वाले कार्यक्रमों के संचालन की शायद कल्पना नहीं की जा सकती थी. इन पाठ्यक्रमों में जो प्रतिभागी हैं वो विविध विषयों के हैं और संपूर्ण देश से हैं, विभिन्न राज्यों से हैं. JNU में संचालित प्रत्येक पाठ्यक्रम अपने अखिल भारतीय स्वरूप को अभिव्यक्त करता है और इसकी गरिमा और मर्यादा को बनाए रखता है. लैंगिक समानता, संवेदनशीलता एवं सामाजिक न्याय की अवधारणा तथा उसका समाज जीवन में अनुप्रयोग एवं व्यवहार समाज को सक्षम, न्यायपूर्ण एवं जीने लायक बनाता है. विभेदकारी मानसिकता, लिंग, जाति या आर्थिक स्थिति के आधार पर उपजी हुई असमानता अंततः समाज में विखंडनकारी प्रवृत्तियों को जन्म देती है। तो हमारा यह अल्पकालिक पाठ्यक्रम जो शॉर्ट टर्म कोर्स है, निश्चय ही प्रतिभागियों को इन विषयों पर नवीन चिंतन सामग्री प्रदान करेगा, जिससे भारतीय समाज और भी गुणात्मक रूप से समरस बन सकेगा। जहां भारतीय परंपरा स्त्री पुरुष में भेद को तात्विक स्तर पर नकारती हो, जहां अर्धनारीश्वर की अद्भुत कल्पना की गई हो, जहां त्वं स्त्री त्वं पुमानसी त्वं कुमार उतवा कुमारी, अर्थात तुम ही स्त्री हो, तुम ही पुरुष हो, तुम ही कुमार हो, तुम ही कुमारी हो, ऐसा कह करके भेद दृष्टि की निंदा की गई हो, वहाँ लैंगिक असमानता एवं उससे उपजे सामाजिक अन्याय पर दृष्टिपात करना बहुत ही आवश्यक हो जाता है। और ये संपूर्ण पाठ्यक्रम मेरा विश्वास है कि इस पर केंद्रित होगा। मित्रों, आज इंटरनेट हमारे जीवन का शायद सबसे महत्वपूर्ण अंग बन गया है। नेट की सुविधा न होती तो इस आपदा काल में संपूर्ण शिक्षण व्यवस्था, सूचनाओं का आदान प्रदान एवं विश्व से कनेक्टिविटी ध्वस्त हो गई होती। लेकिन तकनीक ने हमें इन सब से जोड़े रखा है। लेकिन जैसे समाज जीवन में अपराध हैं, उसी तरह से जीवन के लिए अत्यंत महत्वपूर्ण बन चुके साइबर स्पेस में भी अपराध और असुरक्षा है। हार्डवेयर, सॉफ्टवेयर और डाटा की सुरक्षा, उसे साइबर अपराध से बचाना एक दुरूह कार्य बनने लगा है। और इसलिए हमारे विशेषज्ञ बताएंगे कि पूरे विश्व में जो सूचना सुरक्षा का व्यय है वो $100 बिलियन से भी ज़्यादा का हो चुका है। तो साइबर सुरक्षा इसलिए महत्वपूर्ण विषय है और इस पे जानकारियां साझा करना अत्यंत आवश्यक है। डेटा एवं जानकारियां व्यक्तिगत स्तर पर तथा देश के स्तर पर सुरक्षित रह पाएँ, इसके लिए हमें अपडेट रहना होगा, उनसे संबंधित जानकारियां प्राप्त करनी होंगी। हमारा पाठ्यक्रम इस दृष्टि से उपयोगी भी होगा, समयोचित भी होगा, ऐसा हमारा विश्वास है। वर्चुअल प्लेटफॉर्म पे उपस्थित सभी प्रतिभागियों का पुनः मैं स्वागत करता हूं। आज के अतिथियों को फिर से प्रणाम करता हूं। पाठ्यक्रम की गुणवत्ता, अनुशासन, समय पालन एवं शैक्षणिक मानदंड जो हैं, उनसे हम किसी भी प्रकार का समझौता नहीं करने वाले। हमने जो पिछले 4 पाठ्यक्रम हम जो संचालित कर चुके हैं, उसमें हमने उच्च शैक्षणिक मापदंड बनाए रखे हैं, उसी की अपेक्षा हम यहाँ भी करेंगे। जेएनयू की गरिमा आपके व्यवहार से सुरक्षित रहेगी, ऐसी अपेक्षा करते हुए आप सबका पुनः पुनः धन्यवाद करता हूँ।
धन्यवाद सर, आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। नाउ माय हम्बल रिक्वेस्ट टू ऑनरेबल वाइस चांसलर प्रोफेसर एम जगदीश कुमार सर to address the participant and deliver inaugural address. Over to you, sir.
Namaskar. Let me extend a warm welcome to all the participants, including the experts who are going to speak in today's function. A few days ago, we had a valedictory function for a similar training program organized by HRDC. And I was listening to the feedback from the participants. They expressed the feeling that even though they could not come physically to JNU, sitting at their homes or in their offices, they could participate in this HRDC training. And it goes to the credit of the resource persons that the participants felt as if they sat in a physical classroom and they interacted with the resource persons. I also mentioned in the last meeting that today most of the technologies, especially in communications and computers, the technologies are bringing equity. Those technologies have become more accessible. For example, in a town or a village, if only a single person has a car, he would not have bothered if others have cars or similar vehicles. This person could have jolly well gone to the market, might have visited the friends' houses in his car without really worrying about whether others have. But if the same person had a mobile phone and the others do not have the mobile phone, it would have been of no use at all to this person. That mobile phone would have been useful only if everybody else around him or far away from him had mobile phones. So such technologies are called networked technologies. In network technologies, there is a lot of equity. And today, internet also has become a networked technology. Unless everybody has access to internet, and unless everybody has access to affordable devices to connect to the internet, it will not be of much use. There are, of course, a lot of developments taking place in technology. The cost of the devices using which you access internet, it is coming down. Within India itself, we have close to about 500 million users of internet, and hundreds of millions of smartphone users. So because the cost of technology is coming down, these devices are becoming more affordable. And we of course have concerns about the accessibility to internet, but even that is improving. We have a national scheme of connecting every village using fiber optic networks, and sooner or later we will have broadband access to the internet connection. So there are a lot of improvements that are taking place in terms of connecting with each other using technology. But however, we cannot wait for things to reach to its fullest availability. As the technology is becoming available, we should start using it and get connected to each other. And that is what is happening in the case of the HRDC also. We did not raise our hands because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Our HRDC has designed these programs using online platforms so that hundreds of teachers can benefit. Now, one of the reasons why our teacher colleagues participate in these training programs is, of course, their desire to expand their knowledge, their desire to listen to experts in different areas so that they can enrich themselves, and then they can pass on this knowledge in the classroom to these students. Now, ultimately, all of us, we would like to become effective teachers in the classroom so that we can mentor effectively the students. And in order to become an effective teacher, the first thing that all of us must possess is a deep knowledge of the subject. And training programs such as this will help us in acquiring that knowledge. Number two, I always felt that being an active researcher in your own domain will also help in becoming a good teacher, because sometimes, once in a while, you can bring in some of the latest developments in your research area to the notice of these students. The third most important thing I found in order to become an effective teacher is our emotional investment in the classroom. This is something that most of us do not pay attention. Unless we invest emotionally in the well-being of our students, we will not be able to connect with them. Please remember that we are not robots and going to the classroom and delivering the lectures. We are human beings interacting with another set of human beings. And unless the students realize that we are concerned about their success, we are concerned about their well-being, you will not be able to bridge this emotional gap between your students and yourself. And this is my request to all the teacher participants who are part of this HRDC training program, that please consider this third aspect of our teaching profession, that is emotionally connecting with our students. Now, using online platforms, although we have been using it effectively during this COVID-19 pandemic, these online platforms are going to be a reality after the COVID-19 pandemic comes to an end. We don't know when it is going to come an end, but even if it comes to an end, in the physical classrooms too, we may and we will be required to use online platforms. And the other biggest advantage that I see with the use of the digital platforms is that initially we were very hesitant to use this. There were lots of apprehensions about, can we be effective teachers using the online platforms? But slowly, as we get used to the online platforms, both the students and teachers, we are now finding the effectiveness and the usefulness of the digital platforms. So one of the biggest advantages I see in adopting the digital platforms is that we can reach out to millions of students who are not part of our physical classrooms using the digital platforms. Both UGC and the Ministry of Education are working in making sure that at least some of the best universities in the country and the higher educational institutes will be able to offer completely online degree programs, certificate programs, and diploma programs. You see, a university like JNU admits only 2,000 students every year. On the other hand, we have so many teachers who are outstanding, and their knowledge is not reaching out to millions of other students. And the same is true with many of the best universities and higher educational institutes in our country. We should take the first step in making sure that we use the digital platforms and reach out to these millions of students by offering online degrees. We don't have to wait for the government or a regulator such as UGC or ASCTE to nudge us, to force us. It is our social responsibility as a teaching community, as higher educational institutes, to take the first step and reach out to these millions of students who are in need of acquiring knowledge and skills. I'm glad that HRDC is conducting these training programs to sensitize our teachers in reaching out to the students using the online platforms. We have conducted dozens of webinars in training more than 6,000 teachers across the country in simply using the digital platforms for communicating with the students and for evaluation of the students, continuous evaluation of the students. Having said that, let me share a couple of thoughts about the pitfalls of using the online platforms. When you use the online platforms, sometimes we carry the bad practices of physical classroom to the online platforms. I would like to suggest to the teachers that when you use the online platforms, it is not same as the physical classroom. So you need to do something extra to create interest among the students who are your audience. The first thing that most of us commit, the first mistake that most of us commit is that when we are speaking in a digital platform, we don't look at the camera. We look at the screen because the faces of our participants are on the screen, so we look at them. And that is the first disconnect between you and the audience. I know it looks very inconvenient for us to keep looking at the camera, but that is where we should be keep looking at when you are addressing the audience. And it is always better to avoid keeping from a document. I find that most of the speakers, they keep reading from the document instead of speaking, naturally to the audience by looking at the camera. So it is important to avoid this kind of disconnect when we are speaking on a platform. And in a physical classroom, there are so many things that your audience can see. One, of course, they look at your facial expressions, and they see you walking around, they see you moving your hands, and so on. But in a physical, in an online platform, some of those luxuries are lost. The people are looking only at your face most of the time. So therefore, it is important that we try to acquire some acting skills. You should show that in your eyes, you should show in your face that excitement, that enthusiasm, those feelings in order to emotionally connect with your audience. And when you are part of any online platform discussion such as this, you often see some participants switching off their cameras. Well, that could be because their internet connection is not good enough, therefore they are switching off. But it is always useful when you are teaching a small class of 50 or 100 to request your participants to switch on the camera, so that once in a while you can look at the faces of your participants and see whether they are feeling bored, whether they are actively participating, and so on, because it is important to see how your participants are receiving what you are telling your participants. And sometimes it is quite possible that the students may not turn on the camera because the background will be seen, or somebody may be walking around behind them. It could be embarrassing, and that is the reason why the students may not be turning on the cameras. You don't have to insist on them that you have to turn on the camera, but make a request to turn on the camera so that you can see them once in a while. Whenever you have online classes, it is important that you enter your virtual classroom at least 10 or 15 minutes before. In a physical classroom, I do that. I always go to my classroom. If my lecture is at 8 a.m., I always enter my class at least 15-20 minutes before and engage myself with the students. The same thing can be done in an online classroom. Talk to the students and encourage them to talk to each other, make some noise. You see the life in the classroom when you do this. Don't be too rigid, don't be too formal in your classrooms. Be as informal as possible to create that enthusiasm, that kind of life in the classroom. Well, of course, we adopt many of these things as we learn using these digital platforms, but I thought I should share some of these thoughts which I am learning myself. I don't think that I am able to effectively communicate using the online platforms as of now. I will improve as I start using them more and more. But however, these are some of the things that we need to keep in our mind. Let me once again welcome all the participants of this webinar. We have outstanding resource persons as part of this webinar. I hope that you will immensely gain by attending these webinars, and in turn pass on this knowledge to your students so that they become better learners in your classroom. With those comments, wishing every one of you the very best from this webinar, and wishing all of you to become outstanding and excellent teachers in your career. I take leave. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for enlightening all of us. Your thought-provoking words are always a source of inspiration and encouragement to all of us. Now it is my pleased responsibility to invite Professor P.V. Sharma. Sir, kindly enlighten all of us. Professor P.V. Sharma, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Amity University, Gurgaon. Over to you, sir.
Namaskar. Let me at the outset express my profound happiness in being with you this morning at the inauguration of the refresher course on two very important topics which you have selected. One of them relate to gender sensitivity and social justice, the cause which is so important for a nation like ours as well as for the global humanity. And also the cyber security, so important for each one of us and to people around the world to maintain the highest levels of satisfaction, personal integrity, and of course, trade and transact with tremendous amount of responsibility in the world in which we have already entered to. And therefore, right at the beginning, let me hope that during the refresher course, we all will become far more excited, as the Vice Chancellor, Professor Jagdish Kumar, has rightly said, that we all must be enthusiastically and emotionally connected to the people to whom we are addressing, and of course, do justice with the topic to which we would be talking about during the course of our online classes, webinars, and conferences, etc. Now, we all are quite aware that we are part of a great civilization in this country. right from the early dawns of civilization, the humanity in a country like ours had shouldered a great responsibility to understand the world around and to understand our responsibility to transact and, and connect with each other with tremendous amount of atmita, what we call in English empathy. Atmita, in fact, was the core of the basis of social and emotional connect with each other within our own spiritual civilization. And that is why right from the very beginning, we have shown utmost respect and compassion to everyone, in not only just humans, but all creatures on this earth. And that is why our forefathers have gone to the extent of reminding us that the sense of responsibility which we possess on our shoulders as humans is to connect with tremendous amount of atmita, care and concern and compassion with everyone around. It makes really a painful understanding today to find that the gender sensitivity has become such a sensitive and important topic. It has to be. Our forefathers were very sensitive about gender sensitivity. In our own culture, we have given the highest respect to the woman, the to the ladies and women in our own civilization. We have always kept, in fact, at the highest pedestal, the respect for the opposite sex. In fact, I remember when I was a child in a small village called Khamtala, even the eldest man in the village would touch the feet of the little kanyai, and he would call them as Devij, because that was the kind of respect we had. We never really thought that ever we shall whistle on somebody or talk anything wrong which could hurt the sentiments and feelings of ladies around us. Highest respect was interwoven in the society, and that is the kind of society in which we grew. But as we came to the cities, we found that really speaking, the minute a girl comes on the stage to perform, whether it is any university in the country, the students immediately start whistling as if they have never seen really a girl on a stage. This is the kind of behavior which is really creating a tremendous amount of a problem for us. We must understand that we belong to a spiritual civilization where ladies as well as gentlemen both have been given this responsibility to nurture themselves as human beings, practicing those ethos and values for which India stands for. And therefore, right at the beginning of this very important refresher course, let there be no space for anybody to misuse the opportunity which he or she has to hurt the sentiment of anyone. And we have to show the highest respect, in fact, for everyone within the society. The empowerment of women, of course, is very, very important, and we all are quite committed to ensure that the best quality education which empowers, in fact, individuals to become not only responsible, but to lead a dignified human life becomes part and parcel of our university. And I'm indeed very happy that in our education system, during the last 10, 15, 20 years, I have seen a phenomenal rise in the enrollment actually of the girl child right from school to the university level. When I was Vice Chancellor of Rajiv Gandhi Technological University, I felt myself very, very happy to belong to a state, the heartland of India, where reservation for the girls, even in engineering and technology discipline, was of the order of 30%. So you can imagine that we had almost 50% or more girls in all engineering and technology discipline courses, both at the degree as well as at diploma level. And I felt very happy that this is the best way really to create a society in which the education could become a real empowerment for creating a society where the ladies would have really a dignified life. And I turn back today to the university and look back during the last 20 years, a great many graduates of the university coming from the opposite gender have really done remarkably well. And I find that almost every day they are nurturing, in fact, their families and society so well. So we have to be very sensitive about this. We cannot tolerate any kind of nonsense as far as the care and concern for the opposite gender is concerned. And I would therefore pray that during the course of this program, the gender sensitivity as well as the cause of social justice must be deliberated in great detail, and the action point must be identified. What we need to do now within our own educational systems in the universities to serve this very important cause for which the nation stands united. And I am with you and everyone in this respect. Having said this, of course, we are also today a part of what I call a digital age, an age in which we have taken a bold decision a couple of years ago when the Honorable Prime Minister of India launched the mission Digital India. We were all thinking whether it would really happen in real life or not. But thanks to COVID-19, that we have been now pushed so back in the digital age that almost every single individual in this country is enjoying the benefit of digital age. We are here in this webinar as part of the refresher course of the faculty development program. It's primarily because we are all digitally connected. And I find that now that we have taken a deep plunge into the digital age in our country, and almost all human endeavors, all activities are now being traded and transacted on cyber platforms. It would be very important for us to understand the implications of the digital age in the right earnest to prepare the human society of the kind that is required to take the best advantage of advantage technology, and to at the same time ensure that the happiness remains on our faces while we utilize the rich benefit of use of technology in our day-to-day activity. And therefore, in this address, I thought, let me show you a few slides which will be directly related to how we need to now respond to the requirement of the digital age in the right earnest, and to create, in fact, the layers of activities and programs. There you are. Okay, I hope you are able to see the slides on the screen, each one of you.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Now, the cyber security in the digital age and the need for ethical acumen and technology preparedness is what I thought I must talk for the next 15 minutes or so. I have no reason to shy away from saying that when I grew up in 40s, 50s, and 60s, India was a happy and healthy abode of some 400 million people. Almost 40 crores of people of India were very happy, and we were all quite healthy also at that time. The levels of prosperity, of course, were not as high as they are today, but the ethical and moral standards were very high. In fact, I grew up in the village, as I said, where people would not lock their houses. There was no question of anybody trying to steal anything from anyone, no question of abusing anybody verbally or otherwise. And in fact, happiness was in abundance in the society. This is the kind of India in which I grew up in my early childhood. But when I look back today, we are the third largest economies of the world, of course. These figures are before COVID lockdown, and I am hoping that they will remain relevant even for the future growth of our country. In terms of prosperity, we have created tremendous amount of strength in our society, but certainly on the happiness, we find that we are among the bottom 10 countries in the world, in fact, at 146 among the 156 countries as far as the happiness is concerned. And that is where I think we have to become very sensitive to understand how prosperity and happiness can be cultivated together, utilizing this new age in which we have already entered into, which I call the digital age. Our happiness, our unhappiness is largely due to insecurity, and also due to loss of ethical and moral values that impact our attitude and behavior. When you go on the road, you find that you are insecure, and you feel as if even if you may be driving your car to the best of your ability, somebody will take over from the left and may create problem. You become very unhappy when you see all this happening. Economic and social disparity also create tremendous amount of unhappiness. Poor health of the environment, when you read that the air quality is so bad that it touches 999 microgram per cubic meter during the worst times, and even the national capital, you feel very unhappy because environmental health directly impacts the happiness of people as well as their health. poor civic sense, of course, also create tremendous amount of unhappiness when you find that the zebra crossing is there, but nobody is using that zebra crossing. When you find that you are being challaned only for the papers which you purchase for the car, but not for the bad driving, and poor gender sensitivity, and of course the fear of breach of cyber security all create tremendous amount of unhappiness. And we need to create a happy India. And this happy India we need to create in the digital age, which has truly arrived. Digital transformation is sweeping all sectors of economy, health, education, manufacturing, supply chain management, marketing, banking, commerce, governance, judiciary, all included. Online shopping, online education, e-banking, e-healthcare, e-governance, etc. are now in full swing. Even e-socialization is now a reality. Even if you have to participate in somebody's condolence meeting, that is also taking place on virtual platforms. So you can imagine that the digital age is now sweeping all across our activities. Online payment, data, and information, everything is transacted online, and that too with ease and speed. By a press of button, you are able to send your SMS, your WhatsApp messages, your emails, everything. But the trouble is that whenever you use any application, they ask you to abide by terms and conditions. Without reading them, you press them. You give them the right to enter into your mobile or laptop, and they have the right on all the information which you purchase. Question is, are they using it or misusing it? That is where I think the major concern comes. Transparency, trust, and integrity are the rule of the game to be adhered to in this digital age. But we are liable for breach in the digital age unless the technology takes a better care and people become more ethical. And therefore, the major cause at the moment and major responsibility at the moment with us is to make technology really take care, but at the same time make people more ethical so that their moral and ethical dimensions are properly nurtured. So the use of technology is for a good cause and not its misuse, which creates, in fact, tremendous amount of insecurity and unhappiness. We are a country now, we are second largest after China in the use of internet, and this Vice Chancellor Dr. Jagdish Kumar has already informed you. We have 560 million users in India, and almost will be touching 600 by the end of this year, which is a sizable number. But the good news is that even rural India now is using internet much more than even the urban India. And this good news is a good news because in the digital age, it's very important for us to use the internet and connectivity to reach out to the last man in our society and up to the last mile in our country, so that we are in a position to reach out the benefit of our economic growth and prosperity to our people. And that is why we have to turn this advantage technology into a real advantage prosperity for our urban people on the strength of internet connectivity, which we all enjoy. Of course, the younger ones are using much more than the elder ones. In fact, as far as the use of internet is concerned, but everybody is connected. If you look around the worldwide data, you find that every minute, the kind of transaction that is taking place on note is mind-boggling. People are using online shopping, they are sending WhatsApp messages, you are hooked on to Amazon for most of your needs. You are looking at LinkedIn for connectivity. The Facebook, of course, is keeping people busy from morning to evening. YouTube is being used extensively, Instagram, as well as Twitter, Netflix, and Zoom. Meetings like this, in fact, are taking place in millions and millions around the world. Cyber security statistics of 2020, of course, are quite alarming because they also inform us that hackers attack every 39 seconds on an average 2.244 times a day. And they are as active as we are in the use of internet connectivity for transaction of our own work. The data breaches is also a very high order. And average cyber security spending is ever increasing, in fact, because of such attacks. Everybody is affected, in fact, and when we look at the countries which are safer compared to others, naturally the country which understands the cyber security technology much better has to be much more safe. America, of course, ranks among the highest safe countries as far as cyber security is concerned, but not the other countries. Healthcare, as well as in fact, banking and transactions are greatly affected by these numbers. If you look at the digital trends, of course, in India, they are also quite healthy, and we find that the women internet users also in the urban as well as in rural areas are rising, in fact, in this respect. So everybody using, in fact, internet to the best of his ability in the country. But on cyber security around the world, if you look at, we are among the in fact, the countries which are vulnerable for cyber security, not the most vulnerable, but quite vulnerable compared to America, where the vulnerability is far less. And therefore, this is an area of great concern that we need to now invest heavily on cyber security to ensure that we are in a position to safeguard ourselves now that we are trading and transacting in the cyber security domain. Now, cyber crimes in India are also rising, and someone has to perhaps do a better statistics now to understand that during the COVID-19 times period also, when we are using much more the internet connectivity than ever before, including for all our online transactions and businesses, online education included, that cyber crimes must have gone up beyond what they are exactly here. And this is something which is an area of concern. In fact, those who breach the cyber security, they are far more capable in terms of use of technology compared to those who are using cyberspace for transaction of their business and their work. And that is why there is a big fight which is going on between those who want to breach the cyber security and those who want to use the cyberspace for a good cause. And this, in fact, is a reality. Yesterday only, when I was preparing for speaking to you at this refresher course, a faculty member of mine rang me up and he said, "Sir, I'm really scared. I received telephone call from an unknown number, but the voice was almost like an officer of the university. The minute I said, 'Are you Mr. X?' he said, 'Yes, yes, I am Mr. X. Immediately send the transaction of 5,000 rupees, otherwise you will be in great trouble,' this and that." The person was somehow or other shaken psychologically, and he immediately agreed to part with 5,000 rupees on Google Pay, and he made the payment. And after that only he called me to say, "Sir, that somebody from the university called." I said, "Send me the number." I found that this number is totally a fraud number of a hacker who has been putting people in trouble, nothing to do with the university. So really speaking, this has happened yesterday only. And I advise the faculty member concerned, immediately talk to your bank and inform them to stop the transaction. He spoke to the bank, but bank said, "We are helpless because the transaction has already been made, because this was an instant payment kind of button which he has pressed." So this is just an example to alert you that while you are using cyberspace for much of your benefit, please be very careful. Many of the mails which we received, many of the messages which we get on WhatsApp, even on Facebook, we have to be very careful. We have to take them with a pinch of salt. I get messages that I have been approved with a loan of 1 crore rupees. Now, as a vice chancellor, I would have felt very happy. But then I find that I have neither applied, and this particular email is unnecessarily trying to enter into my email box. I immediately delete it. You all have to be very vigilant and very careful. The digital age, the convenience it provides, but also it creates a tremendous amount of threat. And we are also looking at this threat not only from the point of view of transaction of banks, etc., on the Facebook also. We find a tremendous amount of capability now people have to morph your images and to make fake videos, and they can put any message whatsoever. In fact, I certainly would have liked the Facebook to become far more responsible than it is today. Rather than allowing anything and everything to be mounted, they could have had their own filters to filter out what is authentic and what is not authentic. After all, it's a big business today for Facebook, and they have to shoulder this responsibility in the times to come to become far more secured platform for people to mount. And we all have to be very responsible in terms of using the social media as well as the cyber platform for our work activity as well as all that which we talk and say. Everything is being recorded and seen by someone. Upar wala sab kuch dekh raha hai. Whatever I am talking to you here is being recorded on the Zoom, whether I like it or not. And therefore, likewise, every single transaction which we make on Facebook and on social media and also on our email and WhatsApp, everything is being watched by somebody. So we have to create this kind of responsible human behavior as part and parcel of our educational system. In fact, to create India of our dream, this is one of the major responsibility which we all have. And in the years to come, we have to really look at this. The importance of cyber security in digital age cannot be overemphasized. The data security is very, very important. Unfortunately, we always submit to the applications which we download to say that you can enter into my mobile or my PC and take away all the data and contacts which I have without realizing that these could be utilized for a wrong cause. We have to take, in fact, an opposite declaration from them that you would not be using them for anything other than whatever is legally and rightly justified. Mobile security, network security, application security, endpoint security, identity management, and disaster recovery. All these are very, very important. When I was in IIT, in fact, in the early 80s, I was using my computer for a very important research and development project. Suddenly, I found that one of my co-workers in the project got annoyed with me, and he or she initialized all the data which I had from the measurements I had made on a very important, actually, area which I was conducting serious research at that time. Perhaps he was not knowing that I have been trained in England, and I was keeping, in fact, a copy of every single data. I was replicating it every day. Luckily, I could save myself. Otherwise, I would have been gone crying, actually, in the corridors of the university. Those were the days when data replication was not an easy job. Today, of course, you all must understand that replication of data at a secured place is an important aspect for each one of us sitting in the chair of authority. So all this disaster data recovery become very, very important. Although we are assuming that cloud is more secured, but again, people are raising their concerns. Cybersecurity funding and deals are hitting record high, and more requirement of professionals would be there in this domain. And that is why cybersecurity education is very, very important. In fact, we would find the cybersecurity industries, they are investing very heavily in the cybersecurity area, and even China, United States, and UK, and other countries, they are all investing very heavily, and they would be hiring specialized professionals, in fact, in this area. Now that India has jumped into digital space with all commitment and seriousness, investment in cybersecurity technologies and safeguard is equally important. This year, cybersecurity defender categories have also been defined, and our teachers have to take care of multi-cloud security, outsourced data protections, medical device security, destination security, zero trust networking, and all these very, very important areas. Cybersecurity industries are also rising very rapidly around the world, and in fact, this is an area in which the demand for highly specialized workforce of tomorrow would be there in the IT industry. Cybersecurity is a career choice, therefore is very, very important, and we need to sensitize our students to understand the importance of cybersecurity education and research, and to develop those capabilities. Luckily, the younger generation is far more capable in terms of protecting their cyber space, and they are learning quite well. In fact, the cybersecurity tools and devices, and there is a great interest in this area. I want to see more and more courses, in fact, being offered in the cybersecurity, network security, information integrity, network integrity, and the areas which are alike, including the large data security, very, very important areas now. I thought that these are some of the things which I wanted to talk about, but let me finish by saying that in a refresher course like this, our focus of attention, besides learning the technology tools and what we can do, in fact, in our technology domains, must also be on preparing a responsible, caring, compassionate humanity, because that is a very, very important area. those who come to us in our universities from the first year and they graduate, in fact, in our courses or undergraduate and postgraduate or even to doctoral research, their ethical and moral dimensions, in my opinion, are very, very important aspect of securing a bright future for the humanity at large, for our own people in particular in India. It's very important that we spend a little bit of time talking to them, raising their mentality and mindset to the levels of understanding that tomorrow's world would be happy only if the ethical and moral dimensions of people conform to the requirement of transparency and trust of the kind which technology demands, use of technology demands. Otherwise, we shall end up by hitting each other and by creating, in fact, tremendous amount of unhappiness, even causing mutual destruction using the technology, because now technology is very powerful. And it is this kind of message we need to go back to our student community, and we have to reverberate in the corridors of our universities, in the classrooms and in the laboratories and in all the space which we get while communicating with our teachers as well as students, that personal integrity, professional morality, and ethical dimensions of individuals are now as important or even more important than the capabilities of technology which they nurture during the course of their studies. It is this message we need to take back at the end of the refresher course from here. At the same time, when we go back, let us also say that no amount of tolerance could be exhibited for teaching anyone, no matter what gender he is, and we have to maintain a zero, what we call neutral, zero tolerance actually policy within our universities to show the highest respect, in fact, for all those who come to the university for studies or who work in the university as teachers and professors. It is this kind of gender sensitization is very, very important in our words, in our thoughts, in our deeds. We have to rise to the requirement of purity of thought, which was an essential component of Indian civilization. I leave you with these thoughts and hope that during the course of deliberations during this refresher course, you will come across the layers of technology that will empower you to serve the cause of cyber security and will also sensitize you to commit to the much greater layers of ethical, moral, and personal integrity of the kind that is demanded in the cyber world today and the world tomorrow to which we would be moving to. With these words, let me I take this opportunity to thank Dr. Brajesh Pandey as well as to Dr. Sanjeev Sharma and the worthy coordinators and my friend, Honorable Vice Chancellor Dr. Jagdish Kumar, for giving me this opportunity to connect to you in this very important program where we have the benefit of listening to one of the leading experts, Advocate Neeraj Arora ji. I would certainly like to pick up some threads from him, how this is being really now handled. Our country at the moment requires much greater preparedness to nab the cyber crimes than what we really have at the moment. I hope the cyber laws are also being revisited by the Law Commission, and we should be able to bring newer cyber act, in fact, in place for our country to secure India to make India one of the most secure countries in the world. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to be with you this morning. I wish you the very best time during the course of refresher course and pray to God Almighty that we all will live in a world where moral dimensions, ethical dimensions, personal integrity, and professional responsibility would be scoring much higher compared to what they are today. Thank you so much indeed. Namaskar.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for enlightening. Thank you for enlightening. Sir, can you please close this slide? Sir, can you please close this slide?
Yes, I would. But
thank you very much, sir, for enlightening all of us. And I hope that whoever is connecting to this virtual conference room will get benefited from your words, whatever the experience you have shared. And I learned, sir, that our attitudes and behavior is the deciding factor for our happiness. And how we can develop our moral responsibility to the society and our ethical and the moral value is very important. How to use the technology in a better way to live happy and healthy life. Thank you very much, sir. Now I'm going for the I would like to request Sri Neeraj Arora ji. Neeraj Arora ji directly or indirectly involved with many government agencies in defense sector, the law sector, and is the key speaker for today's session. Sir, I hope we will all happy to listen the experience. Over to you, Neeraj sir.
Thank you very much. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Clearly, sir.
Okay, thank you. So, first of all, it's my privilege to be here, and I'm thankful to Shri Professor and Jagdish Kumar and Professor Vijay Kumar to give me an opportunity to share my thought on this challenging issue of cyber security. Just let me share my PPT with you. So I am also thankful to Shri Professor P.B. Sharma, who have very nicely explained the challenges which we are facing in the digital space and the need for the cyber security. I am going one step ahead than this. My own view is that as of now, we cannot live with cyber security, and every person who is living in the society is a digital person on the internet, and without cyber security, we cannot survive in the virtual space. There are a number of reasons for it, and I'm going to discuss number of case studies why we need cyber security and what type of cyber security we require. The first thing and the foremost, why we require the cyber security, that as of now, the state cannot protect us in the digital space. There are so many offenses which are being committed across the border. There are so many offenses which are being committed using the advanced technology for which the state has no solution. In fact, once you have become a victim of fraud, you have to suffer. Nobody is going to give you any relief. You are not going to get the relief from the securities agencies. You are not going to get the relief from our court. So the only option is to embrace the cyber security if you want to survive in the society and particularly in a virtual space. So now in this session we are going to discuss first as what we need to learn as far as the cyber security is concerned, why we need to learn, and how to learn. So I'm going to cover all these issues one by one. So first I'm coming to the how the society has evolved from the physical space to the virtual space, though I'm not going into the deeper into this aspect because Mr. Sharma has already explained very beautifully what are the challenges of the digital age and why we require the cyber security. But one issue which is bigger than this, and why we require the cyber security is, can we apply the ethics, etiquettes, hygiene, which we have learned from the beginning to live in a physical space, in a virtual space? Can we apply the same thing into a virtual space? So the answer is no, because we have not been trained to live in a virtual space. For example, when I have grown, the society have taught me how to protect myself. So when I go out of my house, I will lock my house to protect my house. But whether we have been taught that whenever we have used the internet, when we have used a particular website, when we have used a particular account, we need to log out of this moment we have used it. When we keep our money in cash or ornament, we keep them in a safe. We put a lock on it. But how many times we are securing our digital document in a similar manner? So the first thing to embrace the cyber security is we need to learn the cyber hygiene. Another aspect which is a very important aspect, we need to look on the virtual world as being created. It is from the binary. So it only understands the language of the code and no other language. So if you speak the language of a government, it does not understand. So if you speak the language of the police, it does not understand. So one and the basic important concept is on the internet, code is low. So that means if you have to do anything on the internet, you can only do by virtue of the code. There is no other option. For example, all the offenses which are being committed on the internet are being committed using the code. Hackers are using the spyware to steal your data. Hackers are using the spyware to steal your personal information. And when you have to protect your computer from the hacker, from the thieves, what do? You install a spyware, install a antivirus, you install a anti-malware, you install a firewall, IDS and IPS, and in fact, all these are nothing but the code. If the government want to control the internet, suppose if the government want a particular website to be blocked, so what does the government do? It passes an order. But how the order is executed? The order is executed only by virtue of a code, because the order goes to the internet service provider, and internet service provider put a code to block a particular website. So we need to change our attitude when we are looking on the internet. So we have to look upon the internet as a made up of the codes, and everything would be done by the code. So here, if we require the cyber security, that we can only acquire by virtue of the applying the code. So first I am sharing you one of the very big case of the spyware, which will show you what the code exactly can do. So it is a famous malware, the Stuxnet. So how this malware works? When it is into a internet, it will automatically look for the window operating system. Once it identifies the window operating system, then it will look for the another software, Siemens Step 7 software, which is being used for running the centrifuge machine in the particularly nuclear reactor and in all the industrial usage. The moment it compromise with this software, what it do? It will do the blast like a bomb blast. So this software was being used by the US and the Israel in the Iran to stop the Iran from their nuclear development work. So this software is one of the best example what the code can do. Now, keep in mind that the kind of the impact it has created, such impact cannot be created by a strong contingent of an army and even by a light aerial attack. So code can do anything on the internet. So we have another very interesting case. What is the actual challenge in the cyberspace? So when we are looking on a cyber security, we need to look at this particular perspective in our mind. So this is a very famous case, which is known as the Estonia hack case. Estonia is a very small country near Russia, but it is a very advanced country. I can give you one of the recent examples that the recent general election in Estonia has held on the internet. So in Estonia, everything, your water distribution, electricity, railway, air, everything is working only on the virtual space, right? So what these hackers did? They hacked into the server of these facilities. They executed the DDoS attack and compromised with their server. And you know what was the impact? Impact was nothing moved in that country for almost 9 days. So this is the type of challenge which we are recently and even now facing, particularly in the aspect of this Indo-China war. So when we are talking about the cyber warfare, so these would be type of the attack which would be executed. These are the type of the challenges which we are going to face. Now coming to the one of the things which we have discussed in the beginning is that there are certain attacks for which the security agencies have no solution, for which our code cannot give you any remedy. So one of the best example is the ransomware. So how this attack is executed? This attack can come to your computer either through email, downloading of software, but the moment it is into your computer, what it do? It will encrypt all the data which is into your computer. with a advanced encryption algorithm, and you will get a window like that. So you are being given a 72-hour time to either pay the money to the hacker or to lose your data. And during this COVID-19 situation, we have seen the impact, and particularly in Europe, the hacker has encrypted the data of more than 10 hospitals which were dealing with the COVID-19 situation, and they demanded the money. And actually, the hospitals were forced to pay the money because otherwise they would have to take the risk with the life of the COVID-19 patient. Another one of the best example, what is the challenge emerging from these type of attack is that in the last 2 years, more than 3 police stations in the United States of America has paid the money to the hacker to get their own data back. So now the very important question which comes with perspective to the cybersecurity is, can we deal with these type of the offenses, with this type of the attack? So the answer is no. If you have become a victim, you have no option but to pay the money to these hackers or to forget about the data. And the only way how you can protect yourself is by installing the anti-malware, by using the best practices in using the computer. So that we are going to discuss in the this session. So another very important case which I am going to discuss with you on cyber security. Till now I have discussed about some of the biggest attacks, but most of these attacks starts with the fault or some wrong act done by the individual. So Sony hack is one of the case which is best example that we may have one of the best hardware and software but these software cannot provide the cyber security to us. So what can provide the cyber security to us? So the fact of this case are that the hacker in North Korea have sent a spyware to one of the employee of the Sony through email, and in the email it was written that it is a patch for your operating system. Please download and update your operating system. What the employee did, he clicked on that patch, installed it, and in fact it was not a patch, it was a spyware. Now you see the intelligence of this spy. What it did, it automatically escalated the privileges, went to the server. In the server, it has stolen the data, sent back the data to the hacker, stolen one of the movie, sent back the movie to the hacker. And the interesting part is that after committing all the offense, this spyware automatically removed all footprint of its own hacking. So when the US has threatened the North Korea that you have committed this offense and we are going to act against you, the answer which was given by the North Korea, it was a very interesting answer. The North Korea have stated that, can you show any evidence against me? So the answer is no. So we have to see that the challenge with respect to the cyber security is that attack may come from any country, number one. It may be a technical attack for which we do not have any solution. Third, it may be an attack for which we may not be able to give any evidence. Fourth, we may not be able to identify the person who has executed the attack. And the only way to protect ourselves is to embrace the cyber security. So another case which I am discussing with you, which may be again an act of cyber war, is the hacking of the Ukraine power grid. So again, the modus operandi was the same. The hacker have sent the email, which was with an attachment. The employee clicked on the attachment, and spyware was installed in the power grid. So this, then again, the hackers got control of their VPN credential, and using the VPN credential, what they did, they reformatted all the software which were available in the power grid, and ultimately there was a complete backup. So that means in any organization, A mistake of a single employee can cost the entity its own survival. So there are hundreds of cases which you can see on the internet where one employee has made a mistake and ultimately the entire organization has to be shut down and the entire community has to suffer. So when we are looking about the cyber security, it is not something as an end user. When you are a part of an organization, you need to know that any single mistake done by you can be costly affair for your organization, for your community. So here I would like to share with you one of the theory which is given by the John Perry, and it's a very interesting theory. So when we discuss about the freedom of speech and expression and the regulation which is being made by the government to take control over the internet, we must keep in mind these two theories. So first theory which is given by the John Perry Barlow is, it's a very interesting quote which I would like to read. The government of the industrial world, I ask you of the past to leave us alone. You are not welcome among us. You have no sovereignty where we gather. We have no elected government, nor are we likely to have one. I declare the global social space are building to be the naturally independent of the tyranny you seek to impose on us. You have no moral right to rule on us, nor you possess any method of enforcement we have true reason to believe. So why this theory is important? Because the structure of the internet is such that it cannot be controlled. So the only remedy for you, for me, if we want to protect ourselves on the internet, if we want to make the optimum use of the internet, is only to embrace the cyber security to protect ourselves. So now I am coming to the few other aspects, right? The second, one of the biggest challenges is the personal data, because on the internet we all are the digital identities. Anybody is going to attack you, anybody is going to steal you. They only want your personal data. And why they want your personal data? Because they are not concerned about you. They are not interested in you. They are interested in only your digital identity, so that using that digital identity, they can commit the crime against you. And what is the value of your personal data? See, somebody referred to the data is oil, data is gold, and Facebook has referred it as water. But one of the important things to learn about the value of the data is that when all these WhatsApp, Facebook, Google, they are providing the service, what they are giving to you? They are giving you one of the best application, one of the best messengers, one of the best networking platform. They are giving you the ample storage space, unlimited access, unlimited transaction. But whether you are paying anything to them, no. They are earning the money in billion. So whether our data can be referred as water, no, it is a gold. But what step we take to protect our data? So I'm telling you, our data is one of the most valuable property from which these companies are earning the million in money in billion, and every criminal requires this data. And why this data is required apart from committing the crime? Because now when the internet has created the one world, now these Facebook, WhatsApp, Google, they have developed as a communities of the people of where there are no boundaries, and using their own power of data, using the narrative, they are in a position to change our ideology. They are in a position to change how we live. They are in a position to influence our election. So in case of the Facebook data breach, their data was used by Cambridge Analytica to influence the mind of the voter in US and UK. And another beautiful thing is when our privacy is compromised, this is also being compromised from these social media platforms. Though there are other ways how the privacy is being compromised, again, the target is only to take our personal data. So the privacy is compromised through the application, through the cookies, through the Google takeout data, through the Google platform. and every possible manner. So all the phishing mails which we are receiving, they are being only targeted at collecting our personal data. So when we come to protecting our privacy, every website, social media website is collecting our personal data. And how we react, whether we have read the agreement or privacy policy before downloading this software, answer is no. So we are simply giving the data to these social media website without taking the care that how this data is being used. So it's very important for us to know and to control our data, because otherwise recently we have seen that one of the Chinese companies collecting the data, and I tell you in US there is one company which share the data with their army in a real time. When the army goes anywhere, at every one single step they know with whom they are going to deal, which is the community, who are the influential people, to whom they target. Every information is being given to them on their mobile in the real time. So that's how your data is being used. So it's very important for us to protect our data. We should be very well aware about the consequences of our breach of data. Now you see one of the best example, one of the recent case where one of the company Pegasus, they were taking the data of the user of the WhatsApp. And the interesting part of it was that by using the one software, they were able to take the cache out of the calls which are being made, message which are being collected, location and everything about the any individual. Now, if you look upon all the mails you are receiving, all the phishing calls you are getting, every criminal, whether it is a small one, whether it is a larger one, they are only targeting your personal information by various phishing techniques, because without getting their data, no offense can be committed against you. So we need to learn that first thing when we talk about the cyber security is to secure ourselves and to secure our data. Now, how our personal data is being used? So we have seen now during COVID-19 situation, also during this Indo-China war rift, that the fake news, the misinformation campaign was being made, and it was being made since time immemorial. It was also being made at the time of the Chanakya, and now Russia is one of the big disinformation superpower. So they are using the misinformation as a propaganda. So another component of the cyber security is that we should know what information is coming to us, to what extent we should believe on it, to what extent we should forward it, and to what extent we should share with it. So the recent Delhi riot is one of the best examples where these Reuters have used the Facebook, they have used the Twitter, they have used the WhatsApp, and in combination they have created the impact with the fake narrative and ultimately executed these attacks. So in this riot, for the first time, a dedicated technique was used to incite the violence. Now China is using it, particularly in this Indo-China rift war. They are using the internet to create an impact on the people in India that they are very powerful. Again, you see the impact of the fake news and fake propaganda which we have seen during the COVID-19 situation, that even that a small information which was conveyed to thousands of people, and ultimately it has created the problem for the government, that when all the laborers start moving to the state by a single fake information. Now coming to the obscenity. So obscenity and pornography has become one of the biggest challenges on the internet, and the reason is because it is very difficult to trace the offender, reason being the impersonation. Second, this obscene information is being propagated from the another countries. So third is the speed with which it is being transferred. So combining all these three factors, that it has become something impossible to control the pornography on the internet. And that is the reason why crime against the women, crime against the children, are increasing so rapidly. So we can see there are so many offenses on the internet, like cyber stalking, obscenity, obscene SMS, transmission of the obscene data, video voyeurism. So through the internet, the data is being collected. So because we are not even able to protect ourselves from these attacks, particularly. So what the legislature has done? Now, what the legislature has done, that they have made that even browsing of a child pornography as a complete offense. So that means if a person just go on the internet, in the Google bar, the person write a child pornography, get a number of websites, click on one website, and the offense is complete. And why such a drastic measure has been introduced? The reason is that we are not in a position to control these offenses, the information which is being conveyed in a real time. So recently the Bombay police has registered 133 FIR during the COVID period only on surfing of the child pornography. Right? So when we talk about the privacy in a physical space, we always protect our privacy whenever we are changing the clothes, whenever we are doing something in private, right? But we always forget that as of now, we are being monitored by the digital space. And you know who is monitoring to you now? Your own mobile, your own CCTV camera. So now there are a number of cases where the people have, where the hacker have peeped into your mobile, have peeped into your CCTV camera and captured your private images while you are being in your home alone. So there are a number of cases. Again, with the internet, with the digital space, we have to change our attitude. We need to learn the cyber hygiene. So when we are talking about the privacy, we have to make a distinction that the how privacy is protected in a physical space and how the privacy is being protected in a digital space. And we need to protect ourselves from the gadgets, from the other devices in the digital space to protect our privacy. This is another case, a very interesting case, where what the hacker did, they collected the information which was on the social media relating to these celebrities. And using this information, they hacked into their iCloud, they have taken their personal data and start blackmailing them. For example, if I tell you, if you have an iPhone and a person get access to your iCloud, from the iCloud he can take away all your personal. So we have to keep in mind that we need to see what are the ways as how the digital space can move into our privacy. From there, we need to stop, we need to map, we need to close all these peep which are coming to our own privacy. Now coming to cybercrime economy, this is another angle which we need to keep in mind. Cybercrime economy as of now is one of the biggest economy, bigger than economy of any country, and it is totally organized. And if you go on the dark net, you can get the stolen password, you can get the vulnerability, you can get the email ID along with their password, you can get the cybercrime as a service, hacking as a service, distributed denials of attack as a service. So that means if I want to collect any information about you, I need not be hacked. I need not have a skill. I can simply go on the dark net, pay the money, and I can get all the information about you. So the only way, again coming to the same issue, to secure yourself, to protect yourself, is only to embrace the cyber security. So when we look upon the cyber warfare, again with the with the movement to the virtual world, everything gets changed. On one side, we have the Trojan like Stuxnet, Flame, and Viper. On the another side, we have attack like DDoS and DOS ransomware. Combine these two, their impact is more than the impact of a contingent of an army or a light aerial attack. So that's why now every country is moving towards creating their own cyber army. So the next war the main component would be the cyber warfare. The reason is, as of now, our physical space is on the virtual space. So whatever we are doing is doing only through the virtual medium. Our communication, our transport, our travel, all the facilities we are availing only through the virtual medium. So again, now the forthcoming attack is going to help only in the virtual medium. So it's not something which we can learn and the matter ends. Because every day you have a new attack, every day you have a new type of modus operandi. So again, it is a learning process and it has to be continuous. The lesson which we have learned from the Sony hack case is that no hardware software can protect you. It is the human which can protect. So again, cyber security has two components. The important thing which you need to keep in mind. The first is the code. We are using spyware. We are using the antivirus. We are using the anti-malware. We are using IDS, IPS, and so many others. That's the one part. But on the second part, it's the knowledge of the human, awareness of the human, that how to respond the cyber attack, which is even more important than the code. For example, till now, we were protecting ourselves from the two-factor authentication. For our bank account access, we are getting the OTP. For every access, we are getting the OTP. But now, the hacker has also evolved the way by which they can bypass the two-factor authentication. They can also bypass the OTP which you are using. So now there are a number of mechanisms by which even they are compromising with these type of attacks. So these softwares are available for on the internet for free. The moment you install on any mobile, you can see all their data on the internet. So when we come to the cyber attack, the thing which I want to add here is that it is something which is a continuous. You have to learn it regularly. The moment new type of attack comes, you need to be aware not only about the attack, but also about how you need to protect yourself. You need to keep in mind that every attack which will come to you will come by way of code. And as an individual, you must know that how to respond that attack. So if you know how to protect your personal information, I can tell you that 98% of the offense cannot be executed against you. No banking attack would be successful against you until you share your personal information, until you do something which helps the offender in getting the access to your digital identity. You must be very clear about that. What is your identity in physical space? What is your identity in digital space? On the internet, all the cyber criminals, they are not interested in knowing who you are. They are only interested in knowing that what is your digital identity, because using your digital identity, they can execute the attack against you. Another aspect which is very important is the social media, because it has become one of the biggest challenges. The reason is on the social media, because there is a large community which is connected. The power of the narrative creates a bigger advantage for the cyber criminal, for the terrorist organization to spread their own psychology, on their ideology. So you can see the previous Dalit attack. So I inquired into that attack, and I tell you, in the 4 hours, they have created the fake profile on the internet. They shared the profile on social media. They forwarded it. They liked it, and the attack was executed. Similar scenario was in the Delhi Riot case. Similar scenario was in the recent Bangalore Riot case. And if you look at the international level, the China is one of the biggest spenders to spread their own ideology on the internet, and also in the war, every country is using it. Because in the times of war, if I use the narrative to show that I'm very powerful, so I would be able to win half of the war. And that is being done by the China. So recently we have seen so many cases where the China colluded with the Pakistan, and we have seen so much misinformation campaign in the Indian scenario, which has infected the communities at the large. And one of the misinformation campaign was the skill of the China. China is one of the cyber power, and I tell you, if you compare the technical communities of both the countries, the Indians are in a better position to develop the new technology. What the Chinese did, they have stolen the data from the US, added into it, and now they are becoming a cyber power. But why they are more powerful on the internet? Only because of the misinformation campaign. So as an individual, you should be very well aware about what the information is coming to you, whether it is authentic or not, because internet is also one of the medium where you can make something which is false as true. So that we have seen during COVID, there were so many misinformation and people have suffered a lot. Because it is the reason is because of the psychology of the individual. If you get some information which is coming from the various sources, some information which is coming from the various persons who are of repute into the society, you believe them to be the true. And on the internet, by spoofing the identity, by misrepresentation, by identity theft, it is very easy to create such type of propaganda. And why it cannot be stopped? The reason is IP spoofing, using the proxy server. So there are so many techniques by which a person can hide its identity, and our investigation agencies or our legal framework may not be able to provide the remedies to the issue. So now we have seen also during the COVID-19 situation that there are so many cases of the bank fraud, transfer of the money from ATM, hacking of the emails. So I tell you that without your personal data being shared, without you are becoming a victim of a spyware attack, such offenses cannot be committed against you. So this movement from the physical space to the virtual space have made it mandatory for the individual who are living in a virtual environment that they must be very well aware about the concept of the cyber security. Not only aware, but they need to update their skill from time to time. And in fact, I would say it's a duty of all the organization to train their own staff, to train their residents in dealing with these challenges. Right? So with this, I close my presentation. So if there is any question or anything, we can discuss.
Thank you very much. Thank you, respected Neeraj sir, for sharing your valuable information and the experience. So what I learned from your presentation that nowadays cyber technology is part and parcel of every human beings. And you have highlighted the threats and do's and don'ts how to use the cyber technology. And if we use the cyber technology secure, so we can secure ourselves and our organization and evenly our country also. Thank you very much, sir. So now we have come to end in this inaugural sessions. And now it is my responsibility to propose a vote of thanks. Before I propose a vote of thanks, I have some announcement to the participant. So participant, your presence is very, very important during all the sessions. All informations or the guideline will share with you in the next session by your coordinator with you for the next 6 days. And we will monitor you like through the attendance. We will share the attendance in the chat box, through your WhatsApp group and through your email also. Thank you. So now, first of all, we express our sincere gratitude to our respected Vice Chancellor, Professor M. Jagdish Kumar sir. Thank you very much, sir, for your continuous support, encouragement and motivations for conducting such program. We are indeed privileged to have an eminent speaker today with us as a chief guest, Professor P.V. Sharma sir. Thank you very much, and we were honored to have listened to your insightful speech on how to live a happy and healthy life. Thank you very much, sir. Our heartfelt gratitude to our keynote speaker, Sri Neeraj Arora ji, for sharing your valuable information on cyber security. Sir, we learned so many things that how to use the cyber technology, and I hope we all, those who are connecting virtually, will definitely benefit it. And in future, we will use this technology in a more secure way. Thank you very much, sir. We would also thanks and express our gratitude to both the coordinator, because they are the key person for next 6 days. Thank you, both the coordinator, Professor Bhaswati Das and Professor for the smooth conduct of this session. I would like to thank our director, HRDC, Professor Brajesh Kumar Pandey sir, for supporting us and guiding us to conduct such program. We are very thankful to you, sir. We are also very thankful to all the valuable participants. Without you, this is not possible to us to conduct such program. Thank you very much, all the participants. I would like to thank all the member of the HRDC, staff member, technical team. We are highly thankful to all the colleagues of the JNU family. Thank you very much. Sir, can we close the meeting now? So thank you very much. And participant, I think you have received your schedule, and we will resume the meeting as per the schedule in next session. Thank you. Over to you, technical team.
Thank you.